The knock on my front door came just after 10 o'clock on a bright Tuesday morning. I remember it clearly because nothing unusual ever happened in our quiet neighborhood. But the moment I opened that door, my ordinary life changed forever. Standing on my porch was my neighbor's daughter, 26-year-old Sienna Hartwell, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling, and her voice barely steady enough to speak. Then she said something that made my heart stop. "I need a husband by Friday." Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of people helping each other when life gets difficult, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. For a few seconds, I simply stared at her. Sienna had lived next door for nearly 10 years. She was intelligent, hardworking, and kind. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her as the young woman who volunteered at local shelters and spent weekends helping elderly residents with errands. She was the last person anyone would expect to show up asking for a husband. The morning sun illuminated the worried expression on her face. Her dark brown hair was tied back carelessly, and she looked exhausted, as though she had not slept for days. I invited her inside, made her a cup of tea, and waited for her to explain. What she told me sounded like something from a movie. Her grandmother, Eleanor Hartwell, had recently suffered a serious health scare. Eleanor had raised Sienna after her parents passed away when she was just a child. The two shared a bond deeper than most people could understand. Eleanor's greatest wish was to see her granddaughter happily married before she left this world. A week earlier, doctors had warned the family that Eleanor's condition might worsen. During an emotional conversation at the hospital, Sienna had promised her grandmother she would return by Friday with good news about her future. She had spoken without thinking, desperate to comfort the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. The problem was that there was no fiancé. There was no boyfriend. There was no wedding. There was only a promise made out of love. As Sienna spoke, tears filled her eyes. She admitted she felt trapped. She didn't want to deceive her grandmother, but she also couldn't bear the thought of disappointing her. Every option seemed impossible. I listened quietly. At 53 years old, I had learned that life often presents problems without easy solutions. Still, I felt sympathy for the young woman sitting across from me. The next few days became a whirlwind of emotions. Sienna explored every possibility she could think of. Friends offered advice. Co-workers suggested ridiculous ideas. One person even recommended hiring an actor. But none of it felt right. Meanwhile, Eleanor's health remained uncertain. Some days she seemed stronger. Other days she struggled. Each passing hour increased the pressure. The entire neighborhood could sense that something was weighing heavily on Sienna. Though most people didn't know the details, they saw the sadness in her eyes and the exhaustion on her face. Then something unexpected happened. On Wednesday afternoon, I accompanied Sienna to the hospital to visit Eleanor. While waiting in the lobby, I watched dozens of families gathered around loved ones. Some were laughing. Some were crying. Some were simply holding hands. It reminded me of something I had forgotten. Life wasn't about perfect plans. It was about showing up for the people who mattered. That realization stayed with me. Later that evening, Sienna came to my house again. She looked defeated. She told me she had spent days searching for a solution and had found nothing. The promise she made seemed impossible to keep. As she spoke, I noticed something. Her fear wasn't really about marriage. It wasn't about appearances. It wasn't even about Friday. It was about love. She wanted her grandmother to feel peace. She wanted Eleanor to know that the little girl she had raised would be okay. That was all. The following morning, Thursday, the neighborhood organized something extraordinary. Without being asked, people began contributing in their own ways. One family brought flowers. Another prepared meals. Friends gathered old photographs showing Sienna and Eleanor throughout the years. Someone decorated the hospital room with cheerful colors and handwritten messages. What began as a small effort soon became something beautiful. When Friday finally arrived, the hospital room looked less like a place of illness and more like a celebration of a lifetime of love. Eleanor sat upright in bed, surrounded by pictures, flowers, and smiling faces. Sienna walked into the room carrying a scrapbook created by neighbors and friends. Inside were hundreds of memories. Photographs. Letters. Stories. Moments. Every page told the same message. You are loved. You have never been alone. And because of your kindness, countless lives became better. As Eleanor slowly turned the pages, tears streamed down her cheeks. Then Sienna gently explained everything. She admitted there was no husband. No wedding planned. No secret fiancé waiting outside. Only a granddaughter who loved her so much that she had desperately wanted to fulfill a promise. The room became silent. Everyone waited. Then Eleanor smiled. A warm, peaceful smile that seemed to erase years of worry. She reached for Sienna's hand and told her that happiness could never be forced into a deadline. Real love would come when the time was right. What mattered most was not finding a husband by Friday. What mattered was becoming the kind of person capable of building a beautiful life. And she already was. At that moment, something remarkable happened. The burden Sienna had been carrying for days simply disappeared. Not because her problems vanished. Not because life suddenly became perfect. But because she realized she didn't need to pretend. She only needed to be honest. The room filled with laughter, tears, and hugs. Neighbors who barely knew one another became friends. Strangers shared stories. Nurses stopped by just to witness the touching scene. The bright afternoon sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating faces filled with hope. For the first time all week, Sienna looked truly happy. Months later, Eleanor's health stabilized more than doctors expected. She continued creating memories with the granddaughter she adored. And while there still wasn't a husband on that Friday, life had its own plans. A year later, Sienna met someone genuine. Their relationship grew naturally, without pressure or deadlines. When they eventually became engaged, Eleanor was there to celebrate every moment. And every time I think back to that Tuesday morning knock on my door, I remember how a desperate request transformed into a lesson about love, honesty, community, and hope. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes that family is about love, not perfection. Special request: comment below with the words "Love needs no deadline" if you believe the best things in life happen at the right time. Sometimes the miracle we are searching for isn't the one we imagined. Sometimes the real miracle is discovering that we are already surrounded by people who care, support us, and remind us that we never have to face life's hardest moments alone. And in the end, that kind of love is worth more than any promise, any deadline, or any perfect plan ever could be.